So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Grove Harris. I represent the Temple of Understanding, which is an interfaith organization. It's a global organization and the only one that was started by a woman, Juliet Hollister, who was a visionary who got a lot of help to enact an incredible amount of connections and build a global organization to try to bring together all the leaders of different faith traditions to create essentially a kind of United Nations asking religious leaders to speak to each other. So I've started working there about 15 years ago when the temple took on a broad eco-justice mandate, understanding that all religious traditions have a commitment to walk their talk about relationship to the land and what we're doing to our environment and what kind of actions we're allowing to continue on our watch and what we need to do to change that. And one of the things we need to do is stay informed by our sources of connection, by our spirit, whatever words work. In my view, the interfaith movement is broad. It includes lifeways, moral philosophies, whether it's love or justice or a passion for a specific religious tradition, any religious tradition, all of that is welcome under this broad umbrella, partly because we practice kindness, which is related to kinship. So for me personally, that means kinship with trees and with animals and with rocks. And I don't always say that in UN spaces where I'm trying to be professional. I don't always say what I need to do to prepare is go sit underneath a tree or find my peace and support by talking to a rock that is a friend of mine. But I wanted to create this space as a way for us to come together, but also with our feet on the ground and with taking breaths and with a kind of sharing that's not driven with my best idea, but motivated by understanding what is the wind beneath our wings. So you're all very welcome to be here. And I have a pretty amazing set of panelists here. I am not going to read all of their illustrious biographies because each of them is motivated by, I'm going to use the word spirit writ large, and they are all involved in multiple levels of activism and engagement, and they all retain connections to sources that guide them in their work. So thank you again for coming, and thank you everyone online. I hope that this session will give you a little bit of a taste of what it's like for us, for people who are here in Nairobi. We've been, many of us not getting much sleep, many of us pursuing a few too many passionate interests, meeting tons of people, having lots of overload as we try and influence this UNEP gathering and the process of the method of work that's going to be carried on by UNEP for the next couple of years. So it feels like the stakes are high, but this is actually a place to say we are working on the ground and in the clouds and weaving a way to continue to work together. So I hope that's poetic enough and able to draw you all in. And I wanted to first thank my co-organizer and colleague, Dalia Marquez. She is with Juventud Unida en Acción, and we work together closely in the women's major group. And I was very impressed by her speaking about how love motivates her work. And then I heard her tell stories earlier this week about how justice motivates her work. So the way we'll do this is, as a co-organizer, I'll ask Dalia to offer a few words, and then we will move to Frankie, who is an honored guest here, who will offer us a land offering and then introduce essentially our first speaker to his left. So that's our immediate plan of action, and then we will go down the row, and we also have one of our speakers who will be brought in online. So that's our plan of action, and everyone's bios are available to you. The Temple of Understanding website has a full write-up of this session. So the more you want to learn about them, it's completely available. A few words, please, Dahlia.
Thank you so much, Grove, and thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Well, about my love for justice, that is at the same time what inspired my work in all my fields as a feminist, environmentalist, but also as a peace builder, started because since I was a child, my mom and my dad used to do like some kind of social and voluntary work in the most marginalized communities. So they don't have anyone else to take care of me or my little sister, so they bring us with them to those activities. And while they were working with the people from the community, the kids play with the toys in the garden in a different place. And then I have the opportunity to start to talk with kids like me, 8 years, 7 years, 9 years, about their lives. So to me, can you imagine someone with 7 years? Oh, tomorrow I have to go to school so early. And then I listen the other one say, oh, are you going to the school? Yes, of course I have to. I cannot go to the school. What do you mean? Yes, I cannot go. I don't have pens. I don't have books. I don't have anything. I have to stay here. The school is too far away from here, so I cannot. But I would love to go to a school. So at that moment, something changed here. I was like, huh, I am complaining because I have to go to the school, but this person that have my same age dreams with that opportunity. So I realized that in the full world, in society, we can find a lot of difference, inequalities. And to me was so unfair for that, I mean, being seeing that situation, someone that has the same rights as me, same age, with a lot of curiosity to learn without the possibility about going to the school, while I was complaining for the same reason. Okay, something is bad. And then since that moment, I remember that I fell in love about justice because my feeling was, oh my God, this is so unfair. This is not okay. All the kids must have the same rights, right? But it's not the reality. And then at the university, I was facing the same situation. So since that moment, something happened, and I start to work, focus on achieve or ensure justice. Justice is a huge concept, but also applies for nature. The animals, they don't have a voice. The plants, they don't have a voice. The water doesn't have a voice. But we need to ensure justice because are part of all ecosystems. And also, the most affected people for the climate crisis, degradation, pollution, for the environmental crisis in general, are those facing the biggest injustices in war. We have gaps. That is a reality. What can we do? Complain? No, we need to work. Therefore, I am activist, therefore, I am a lawyer, therefore, I am in these spaces and I invest so much time on this. Because to me, it's like my purpose of life is to try to do something better, good, because that makes me feel that at least I am changing little spaces for people. Because I also face several inequalities. I live in Venezuela. I born and was raised in Venezuela. So I am a witness of the inequalities and the difficulties. And yeah, therefore I am so deeply in love of justice. Thank you, bro.
Thank you so much, Dahlia. Your profound motivations are evidenced by the incredible amount of work that you do. And now Frankie Arona, he's with the Society of Native Nations. I believe he's an executive director, and that's an intertribal nonprofit. He also does a ton of work at UNEP and with the Indigenous peoples major groups. And Frankie, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Haku. I guess first and foremost for me, I want to acknowledge where we're at and the people of these lands and territories, and to the Messiah and the many other indigenous peoples here, and give thanks for their sharing their space, time, lands and territories, food and water with us. And so, and the most beautiful welcoming and hospitality I've experienced in many places. So I'm always happy to be here. I come here quite a bit, and I'm always grateful to the love that they share to those that come and visit. So for me, I'll keep my part kind of short. We have some amazing panelists to offer their lived experiences and their connection. For me, as my community and what we would say as an indigenous perspective is that when we talk about environmentalism or activism, I'm taught by my aunties and uncles that, that those perspectives and views or words were part of our culture and our spirituality, our way of life, long before those words even existed, because we're taught to leave a place better than the way we found it. We're taught that we're not separate from our environment, that we're one and the same, and that our first environment that we come into is the womb of our mothers, the most safest, most beautiful, and protected places that we will ever experience in our physical life forms here when we come from the spirit world. And now those places have been violated, they're polluted, they're contaminated because of the many climate crises that we're facing in the triple planetary crisis. And I think when I have these conversations with my uncles and my aunties about where we're at, and they state that we have forgotten to do our part, that we take, and we forget to give back equally, that we're responsible for a balance and having a balance, and the perfect example is that is with the first thing that you do when you come into the physical world from the spirit world. And what is that? That's when you cry. And what is crying? Crying is breathing. So what is breathing? Breathing is you breathe in, you take, you breathe out, you give back. You breathe in, you take, and you breathe out, and you give back. And all that we coexist with, our environment gives what we takes what we give and then gives back to us that we take, right? And it's a balance, and we're out of balance because we've taken more than we've given back, and it's our responsibility to do that. And when you ask them, what do we do then to put things back in balance? They would say the reason why we have so many of the issues that we're facing today is because we have forgotten to do our part and to live up to our responsibilities. And my auntie, that's no longer with us, Grandma Morningstar, would say, the way you're gonna fix things is with love. And think, and they would say to not just love, but to make the decision to love, right? Like my auntie would say, you can love someone, but they would never know that you love them if you don't tell them. That love is a choice, because they will never know if you don't tell them or you don't show or express it, right? And so we have to make the choice to show the love. As if you love your mother, your father, your loved ones, whatever it is that you are connected to, like we are connected to our land. We love our Mother Earth. We love the connection. It connects us to those that came before us and those that will come after us. And so if you love the water and the rivers like you love your mother or your child, then you're not going to want to harm those rivers, right? You're going to want to protect it, to nurture it. If you love the air, you're going to want to nurture it, protect it. The land, nurture it, and protect it. And so my aunties and uncles would say that we need to love more. And that's the most powerful and most healing medicine that we can possess as human beings and as relatives, because it's the air and the land and the water that connects all of us, our environment that connects all of us, more than that we're not connected. And so to remind us as relatives and our responsibilities. So So yes, I would love to hear everyone else's lived experiences, and I think they're all very, very important and inspiring to hear how we love those around us in the environment, because we are the environment, we are the land, we are the air, we are the water, and so I want to ask a young relative here, Shananine, to share her lived experience as well as everyone else to share their lived experiences and their love that they have for the work that we do and the reasons why we're here, remembering why we're here in these spaces to make sure that those lived experiences are part of these negotiations, because that's what's actually needed to rehumanize these conversations. So thank you, Haku.
Thank you, Frankie. Yeah, first, yeah, to thank the opportunity and also like how you're all opening yourselves. I believe that is also central to this work that we're doing to not forget where we come from and why we're here, as Frankie says. Me, I come from specifically the semi-desert ecosystem of the Valley of Tehuacan in Puebla, in Mexico. That is where I grew up, where my ancestors are all from. Half of what I am as well, because the other part is like from the coast of Mexico, where my father is from the Totonaca region. But I grew up as in Giwa, and that is what where my mom is from, or like all our relatives are from, and that is like the territory that showed me and teach me everything I know. And I believe that is central to why I'm here, to why I do what I do, defending life, defending the earth, our access to land, our ecosystems, and all the forms of life that exist within it. I also believe that it is not that the hills or the mountains or the animals do not speak, but it's that sometimes we do not listen or that we don't know the language. But we have listened, and I believe that is what is in the core of our stories. That is what the legends tell us. That is what the ancient knowledge has been preserving, how to listen to them and how to give back to them. It is in that knowledge where I also uh, put my feet to like stand to defend what is right. That is defending precisely the right of youth, the right of indigenous youth to preserve those stories and to keep pass them along to the future generations, because it is something that the colonial system, not only from the like the emperors, not only from like the metropolis, but also from the nation state, has reproduced over the years to erase all this knowledge that us as indigenous peoples have, because it is precisely a form of living, a way of seeing and being in the world that is inherently in opposition to the form of the world that the system that benefits from the destruction of life is replicating. So it is because of that that there is not only a threat to the people that defend our culture, that defend the land, but also why it is even more important to keep doing that work. I believe that because of that, I also have a privilege and a responsibility to that, to acknowledge that we still have that knowledge, that we still have our language, despite everything that happened. And it's because of that that we are in here. And why we go outside, why we come to these spaces, but at the same time, why we stay in our communities, and why do we keep showing up despite it's difficult, despite of the conflicts, despite we all have different forms of fighting, of defending, but because all of that adds up to the possibility of creating other worlds with many worlds fit, which is what a lot of autonomous communities that have realized autonomy in under the Mexican territory say. And that is also from that vision of understanding and loving the possibilities of what we can create if we go back to the roots, but also if we listen to the dreams of us and of the people that come after us. And I believe it's precisely in that sense of understanding the cycles of the time and the cycles of nature where we find not only the hope, but precisely the love to keep doing this work. Eh, because one of the ancient gods in the Ingiwa cosmology is Xipetotec, and Xipetotec is a god that is the god of transformation, and it precisely arises and comes from the understanding that in a region, because it is a semi-desert, water is so important and is at the core of everything, that it is the water cycles that create the different views of the seasons and of the ecosystem. Something that we say oftentimes is that the hills, they never die. They are reborn every time that the water comes back. And I believe that is precisely what happens to systems, to history itself. That is why I also believe that change will come, because the rain, even though there is dryness and you may think that it will not come back, it always comes back. And it always gives that regeneration to the land, to the soil. That is precisely where the knowledge of planting and sowing the land, of sowing the crops comes from. It is in that precisely the recognition of how do we get back from that understanding, and how do we give as well. It is precisely in that sense that I, with my friends and colleagues in our collective that is called Natsu, that it translates to Hill of the Flower, Cerro de la Flor, that is our youth collective that precisely is working to regenerate and revitalize the traditional knowledge from our communities, in Kiwa primarily, but also in Usabi and Mixteca from our region, to get back the traditional knowledge and the traditional systems of sowing that are the ones preserving our native seeds, that are the ones preserving the traditional foods from our community, that are at the root of who we are, and that are also the possibilities to create solutions to the food crisis that we have in the world, that is fed by all these corporate interests from the agrochemical industries and from factory farm industries that are displacing these forms of life and forms of eating. And that is what we see is at the core of what we do and why we do what we do. So yeah, that is a little of like who we are and our truth. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shananine. Really appreciate your joining us today. Frankie, are we good to keep on? Okay, wonderful. And particularly thank you to both of you. The Temple of Understanding has a commitment to listening to Indigenous peoples because of the need for the knowledge as well as the rights issues. So I really appreciate both of you coming here. I also want to say that my predecessor and teacher at the Temple of Understanding was Sister Joan Kirby, and we have in New York at the UN a really strong group of nuns who are engaged in all kinds of environmental advocacy. And that's partly how I got connected to my sisters here. I think next, Grace, would you be willing to start us off thinking about the Anglican community and your work? I know you're heading up ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment. And so your source of spirit may be somewhat different, but most welcome for you to tell us what you're doing and where your sources carry you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Grove, for that awesome introduction. I don't know, I hope I could live up to that change of atmosphere. Thank you. Okay, my name is, it's good now. Okay, my name is Grace Maganga. I'm from Kenya. I am the founder of an organization called Action for Climate Empowerment, as Grove said. And in the Anglican community, which is what I'm representing here today in this forum, we come from a point of saying that environmental activism isn't something that is new, it's not something that is made. It's not something that we invent. It is something that was there before us, and we actually join a lineage. We say that we do not begin environmental activism, we join a lineage of women, a lineage of indigenous communities, and a lineage of children, and a lineage of those leaders who come before us, and talked about environmental stewardship before the words were coined in the rooms. So when we talk about faith, we're talking about the responsibility that was bestowed to us by God to take care of the environment, take care of the earth. My sisters talked about water being very important. My brothers talked about the air being very important. These are the very elements given to us as man, and we are supposed to be stewards of the earth. So a little about myself. As I said, I founded a nice organization. It is a youth-led organization, and we carry out ecosystem restoration in an innovative approach. We use faith, culture, creativity, and innovation through that. So a bit of my story was we want to plant these trees, we want to carry out ecosystem restoration, but then again, we have to look at how are we growing the trees. So I decided to come from a point of establishing tree nurseries. So we'll go to plant trees, we will organize activities, we'll mobilize people, but at the end of it, at the root of it, we lack these tree seedlings. So that's where my problem started. So I say, okay, so we do not have trees, let us establish tree nurseries. So I start mobilizing people to establish the tree nurseries. Then I reached to another challenge. We don't have community land for establishing tree nurseries. And those that were there before end up failing because maybe the effort wasn't joint, maybe it was individual, maybe it was a single CBO or a youth-based organization that began. So I sat down and really thought and asked myself, which is this one point that I'll go to and I'll find everyone together in one roof. Everyone brought together with no vested interest, no political ambitions, nothing, just pure, out of purity, both the rich, the poor, all walks of life, indigenous, from the city, everywhere. And it came to me, it's the church. It's the church. And I told myself that's where I'll go. I come from the Anglican community since I was a child. So I went to my local church. By then, I was living in the city, which is another story. It also comes as part of my motivation. I was raised in the city. Every time I go in the countryside, I come from a very beautiful part of Kenya called Taita Taveta. It is in the coast, and we also have hills. So I usually say, have you ever seen hills at the coast? It's very intriguing. But every time I go there, it's so sad. It's diminishing at a very fast rate, and that's where my motivation came from. I live in the city, and the people there, I find like maybe they're not so much in touch as they should be, and I'm here lacking. So when Dalia was saying there are those who are going to school, and I'm wondering, this same person is wondering, he or she also wants to go to school, and I'm going to school, and I'm feeling like it's quite a hard task. So the same way I was feeling for them, I was like, here people are raised in hills and valleys and rivers and are not even taking care of it. I come from the city and I don't want to leave. The only thing that's making me live here is because I have to go back and live my life. I have to go to school. I have to listen to traffic jam. I have to listen to it's tiring. So I had to do something, and my local church was still in the city, which was another challenge too. We brought people together, we mobilized, and I had for me, it was kind of a test drive at first. I want to establish tree nurseries in the rural area, but where do I start? I only know my community where I am from, which is in the city. So we went there. It was a challenge raising the money and everything, and funds and resources as well. But what was not a challenge was the people and their hearts. That was not a challenge. They'll be like, Grace, what do you want? I need trees. Okay, we'll bring trees. Grace, what do you need? I need iron sheets for the fencing. Okay, we'll bring them. The bishop or the pastor at my local church, Grace, where do you need land as well? I'm like, yes, I need land. It's the whole point. It's the whole point why I came to the church. It's the one central communal place where I can get land that is not owned by anyone, by a community. And I was like, thank you. So I got land, I got all the resources, and I was happy. So when that worked, I asked myself, so how do I scale this? So I decided, let me just wake up one morning with my fellow youths and we are going to talk to the Archbishop in Nairobi since the offices are there. And that's also another thing I share so much opportunity. Let me not look at living in the city as a con, it's also a pro for me. So I have what people say they call platform, they say accessibility. So I'm near the city. What can I do? So I go to the bishop's office and I say, this is what we did in our church, and we would like you to guide us how we can scale it and how we can do in other churches because it's a gap that is there. So they tell to you, which is the common language every time we say, okay, we don't have much, but this is what we can do. This is the networks we have. This is where we can lead you. And I said, this is actually very much. And that is what we went to. So from there, everything was kind of opening up. We're able to be connected to those people who can help us establish tree nurseries, mobilize people, carry out ecosystem restoration programs, and in all of the things that we have done, in all of the, pledges we've formed, we attribute them, most of them, to the church, and it's not only the Anglican as well. There's something everyone has talked about here, and it's love. When you're planting trees and you're having a program, you don't say it's the Anglican, it's the people, it's the church. You start something, the Catholic are joining, the Redeemed are joining, the Full Gospel are joining, and working with the churches has taught me so much. I didn't know even terms like yes, my sister.
Ecumenical.
That one. And I was like, yes, we do have a big role to play, and that's not something we should underestimate. So just to go quick, that is my work as is Grace and the founder of Action for Community Empowerment, and we hope that we continue growing to that. In the Anglican Communion, I would like to talk about a movement that began in the Pacific, the brothers and sisters, and they called it Enough is Enough. It was part of the advocacy messages in COP16. And this is when they say that they're tired. They're tired of people not listening to them. So they say enough is enough. And Enough is Enough, for me, is a very special program because they used the faith aspect. They used a framework from the faith framework. And the framework was known Reweaving the Ecological Mat. We call it the REM framework. So in the Reweaving Ecological Mat, it's not that complex. You see, I love things in faith. They're never complex, you know. I'll just tell you, read the Bible. You remember God said this, there's a scripture in that, then you're able, everything flows. So in Reweaving the Ecological Mat framework, we have 3 pointers. And the first one is theological and cultural framing. That's when I said, if I want to ask you to plant a tree, I will tell you, we are having this event. Will you be available? You want to come and plant a tree? Then I'll have you thinking, but then I'll tell you, remember Genesis? The Bible says that you are an environmental steward. I mean, I hope it's not emotional blackmail. But we as humans sometimes follow from a point of directive. And there's so many things in the Bible. Yeah, for sure. And from that is when we get to spark emotions in our hearts. So from that, we're able to weave so many theological aspects in the Bible, and from our teachings, from Jesus' teachings, and all our faith leaders from all our various faiths we come from, and we're able to turn our fellowship, our stewardship into action, and that really matters a lot. So the second pointer is economic framing. This is where we look into supporting the small-scale economies that run the communities. We say that sometimes urbanization stole away the village from us, the community from us. Nowadays, if I need to go somewhere and someone needs to look after my children, I need to pay. I need to buy back the village. I need to buy back the community. Are you getting that aspect? Yeah, so we are looking at raising the local economies in the community. How do we bring back the small communities, the small economies in the area? So I touched about Taita. So as an example for that, those who are Kenyans, they know that we have one of the marginalized communities. I myself come from a marginalized tribe. I'm a Taita, and we host Savo. It's not much widely spoken about, but the Savo East and Savo West is larger, actually almost 5 times larger than the Masai Mara, which is popularly known in Kenya. And because of that, we have communities living in wildlife corridors, conservation projects. They will call them the Red Plus, and they go through a lot. They lack water. They have to go through the poachers. They face human-wildlife conflicts. We have elephants. They destroy the fence, destroy the food, which is supposed to be their harvest. So a lot of societal issues is intertwined. So when we talk about the small-scale economy in the community, it's not as complex. I saw Madam here working with baskets, and she was passing to Dahlia. And I was like, that's the same thing we're actually doing. We have these women in these communities. They can't do much, but what do they have within them? They have reeds from the Savo community. They have their sisal. So they take this sisal and they weave them into so beautiful baskets, such beautiful baskets. You look them and think, oh my God, I like that. I like that. But how are you able to help them to turn this into money that they can use in their household, in their community? So what happens is this also reduces overcompliance, external dependency, because most of the time these are people with vested interests. You never know who is willing to help and who really has their other motives. When you give them money, for example, there's the elephants. An elephant came and they went into these farms. These are stories that happen so much. Even water tanks are destroyed. They're supposed to have it, so now they have no food. They have no food within their households. They're going to starve, right? They have no water. But if you're there selling these baskets that these women are weaving, if you're there promoting the youth who are doing local ecotourism in the area, you're bringing money back into the economy. You're bringing money back into their community, into their household. They won't have to go doing these other diminishing things that destroy the ecosystem and also themselves and their dignity for them to earn money to feed them. And that's, in the first place, it's not their problem in that situation. It's not their problem that they're vulnerable. It's not their problem that we're busy cutting trees, So we shouldn't make them suffer. We should support their local economies, and that's what we also vote for as the second pillar in REM. So for the third one is community resilience. So community resilience is just tied with similarly the same to the first one. And what makes this one special is the sustainable aspect of it. So we talk about food, water, clothing as the basic needs. It's not always about money, but what do they have themselves? What are their available local resources that they can turn to food? They have farms. Maybe their farms are not really arable. What are the other forms of farming, agribusiness that they can tune into to empower themselves? And that's what we talk when we talk about increasing their self-reliance. So to wrap up this framework, there's a gospel I usually teach in my organization when we're in the community, when we are advocating, when we are advocating for ecosystem restoration, and we call it an holistic approach. This gospel I would like to, if I left this room without teaching all of you, I would feel so bad. And it's something like an icebreaker as well. So I'll be so happy if I taught it to you for holistic transformation. So this is what we say. Let me have your hands like this. Okay, it's there. So we say knowledge in our minds, food on the table, money in our pockets, right relationship with self, others, and God. And that is it.
And that's it.
And that is it. You're welcome. So when we teach that in the communities from this angle of faith, we say our work is done. Right knowledge in the mind, food on the table, money in the pocket, right relationship with self, others, which encourages collaboration, and God. God is the center of everything. And when we respect him, I think everything is gonna be fine. So just as a parting shot, I'm gonna say the 4 pillars that hold us together. And we all have insisted about love, which is also the aspect. So I say environment is not just science, it's culture, faith, it is community, and it is love. So for me, when I talk about ecosystem restoration, every time I've been boardrooms, policies, treaties, negotiations, everything. But what worked for me, even in my whole background in school, it was these 4 aspects: faith, community, love, and culture. Thank you.
Grace, thank you so much.
Thank
You are a rock star. Really, very impressive presentation. And I want to thank our tech people behind the scenes, Frank here for switching us over from Teams to Zoom. And I'm hoping that Suzanne, you're ready to help us bring in Reverend Dr. Rachel Mash, who she is also an Anglican, part of the Green Anglicans, a leader of it, and she's the environmental coordinator of the Anglican Church of Southern Africa. And she's going to speak with us more on the larger international aspects, because there's opportunities within churches to work even on larger scales. So we went from tree planting to community resilience. And Reverend Mash, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And we'll
Good
see.
afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can. If we can get you pinned to your larger, that would be really helpful. Much better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be with you. And yeah, Grace was amazing. That was a really inspiring talk. Well done. I'm proud of you. What is the wind beneath our wings? How do we continue with eco-activism? For me, my conversion moment was I was working in the area of HIV and AIDS. I was running the Anglican program on AIDS. And my husband, who is a doctor, he went to the AIDS conference in Toronto, and he came back saying, there's something coming down the line which is worse than AIDS for Africa. And I was like, there can be nothing that is worse than AIDS for Africa, because we were losing kids, we were losing people, we didn't have antiretrovirals at that time. And when he was in Canada, he had seen the premiere of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. And when I watched The Inconvenient Truth, I realized climate change is real. I can't unsee it. And I knew that I did not want my children and my grandchildren to look back at me and say, you knew and you did nothing. And that has been my motivation since I started being involved in this work. Another clergywoman once said to me, I cannot bear to leave a bleak and barren world for my children and my grandchildren. And I think for many of us, the motivation is love for the next generation, for the young people growing up, for our children and our grandchildren. And that is the motivation. I think the second motivation for us as people of faith is that we have hope. And many people are suffering from eco-anxiety, and yet faith communities can bring hope into this wonderful, distressing, amazing environmental movement that we're part of. I remember in the darkest days of apartheid, Archbishop Tutu was asked, are you optimistic about the future? And he said, no, I'm not optimistic at all, but I am a prisoner of hope. And as people of faith, we are prisoners of hope. It is hope which is the basis of our belief. St. Augustine said this, hope has two beautiful daughters, anger at the way things are and courage to make them different. And I think as people of faith, we have to have anger at the way things are. We know that there is holy anger. Jesus went into the temple and turned the tables over. And I often feel that holy anger. In July of this year in South Africa, we had terrible flooding. 100 people lost their lives. But the people who lost their lives were people living in informal settlements. They were the poor people. They were the vulnerable people. Rich people, pick up the phone and call the insurance. Climate change is impacting on the poorest of the poor, and it is the inequality. South Africa is one of the most unequal countries on this planet, and that has to make us angry as people of faith. Gus Speth, who was the environmental advisor to President Bill Clinton, said this, I thought that the biggest environmental problems were climate change, pollution, and biodiversity, and with good science, we could solve them. I was wrong. The biggest environmental problems are selfishness, apathy, and greed. And we scientists don't know how to deal with them. It is our ability as faith communities to challenge apathy, selfishness, and greed that we have to bring into this moment where the countries are moving towards individualism, to nationalism. It is the faith communities that say it is a sin to be apathetic, to be greedy, and to be selfish at this time of crisis. I was very angry a few weeks ago when I heard, unfortunately, my fellow countryman Elon Musk saying that empathy is a sin. Empathy is a blessing that we all must have. So we have to have that holy anger to drive us forward because we love our communities, we love nature, we love creation, which is being destroyed. And the second beautiful daughter of hope is anger and courage. Courage to believe that we can make a difference. I can't change the world, but I can make a world of difference where I am. I can make a world of difference in my circle of influence. And each of every one of us can make a difference where you live, in the street where you live, in the school where you go, in the community where you live, in the shop where you shop, in the restaurant where you eat, in the church or the temple or the synagogue where you attend. We can make a world of difference. So what is my daily wind that carries me up? As you go to UNEA, you have to have your feet planted in the soil. You have to grow tomatoes. You have to love the creation that your creator gave into your care. And you have to sit under a tree and pray to Creator God. Because if we do not do that, then it will be empty words. But if we worship our Creator God, and we care for a small portion of God's creation, we will have the strength to keep going for the long time. I want to end with a challenge for all of us. There are so many environmental issues that are hitting us constantly from all areas, multiple issues, and we become overwhelmed. I believe that God is calling us to do this, to identify your heartbreak. What is it when you listen to the news, when you see your social media feed that breaks your heart? Maybe it's plastic. Maybe it's the plight of children in drought-infected places. Maybe it is the loss of beautiful ecosystems. What is it that breaks your heart? Because that is where the Spirit of God is touching you. And if you become involved in that issue, you will have the strength to keep going for the long term, because then you are under the anointing of the Spirit of God, our Creator. So follow your heartbreak. Find others, find your tribe, work together with other people of faith and others of no faith, and follow your heartbreak. And God will sustain you for the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Nash. I can tell you've been doing this for quite some time. That was a very heartfelt and lovely set of directives. Whew. Now, Susan, you're going to be next, and it's a change, but not a change. So Susan is a Maryknoll sister of St. Dominic of Kenya, but she has worked around the globe and has administrative skills and passions in a whole set of social justice areas. So what would you tell us, Susan?
Oh, that's a big introduction. So what I'll do, because I tend to wander around when I start speaking, I am going to read my reflection, because if I begin to speak, we will be here until tomorrow, and he's going to turn off the light. So thank you, Grove, for organizing this, and for my fellow panelists who really spoke so well and have shared with us deep insights on how to take care of our common home and ourselves. So So for me, what is the wind beneath my wings? I have two. So today I'm speaking as an African Catholic woman. My African and Catholic belief systems shape my reflection on the care of the natural environment and all people. These two are the wind beneath my wings. So growing up in the village, my mother and grandmothers used to tell us stories about the interconnectedness and interdependence of people, nature, and the supreme being. For example, among the Meru people of where I come from, if the rains failed, the mogwe or the seer would involve the community, and they would go to a sacred space where they would offer sacrifice and prayers for forgiveness and healing of the earth, and prayed for the rain. Of course, the community was involved in choosing an unblemished sheep or goat. They will also have a gourd of honey, and also the seeds that will be planted on the ground when the people went back home, and those would be blessed. And by the time these people went down the hill, planting the honey along the riverbanks, the rain would start. I also grew up following, when I was a little girl, following the women and girls going to collect firewood in the hills just near my home. And the women, the old adults, would tell us, do not cut any green branches. You need to let them grow. So we do not extract. We take what is dead already, but it gives us life because it gives us fire. It's firewood, and it helps us cook our food. So it's recycle. You do not cut down a green branch. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. When I go home to the village, I feel sad. Those beautiful hills are no more. There's no vegetation. All you see are gullies and rocks. We can attribute this, of course, to population growth, modernization, the use of charcoal for cooking, greed, and short-sightedness of political leaders, and a population that does not adhere to its traditional values of care and non-extraction. Grace talked about culture as one of the pillars. Shanlin spoke about the culture as well, that has taught us to care for what we have been given, what all of creation is been given to us to be stewards. But we have learned to be extractors, not nurturers. So I also remember how the sound of water from the river near my home soothed me as I slept. And then I would go down the river and put my feet in the water to sort out things in my head. But today, unfortunately, that's not the case, because the water levels have reduced so much. Why? Because of the deforestation I just talked about. And also some political leaders diverting the water to their own farms to do their own commercial farming, and leaving very little to the people downstream. So now I go to my Catholic faith. It teaches me to view the natural world as a gift, and that every person is created in God's image and likeness. And therefore, I must love. We have had that word love from the time we started this session. I must respect each and every one, whether it's a rock, it's a tree, it's a river, it's anybody. That needs respect. Also, I need to protect and nurture. So Adam, she's talked about being in administration. I'm not really in the administration, but I work at the Marinol office for global concerns. It's an advocacy office for social justice, global issues, environment, climate, human rights, everything is part of what we do. But I would say for today, we really take the integrity of creation and care of our common home very seriously. As missioners, we have learned from the people among whom we live and work about the best practices for advancing peace, justice, and the integrity of creation. The Marinol Sisters, a Catholic religious women group of which I am a member, have discussed at different stages for more than 20 years about what we now call a One Earth community. In 2002, at the 15th General Assembly, the sisters reflected and discussed the theme, mission, evolving towards a global community. Although the sisters had been involved in caring for the environment for years before this, at this General Assembly, they explicitly stated their oneness with the cosmos and the imperative to change our attitudes. They resolved to, one, develop a new understanding of justice as a right relationship between humans and the rest of creation, moving from human-centered to cosmos or earth-centered perspective. Second, to create sacred spaces to share our diverse experiences of the divine so that we may deepen our communion and be a healing process, a healing presence within the cosmos. Third, desire to own the deeper knowing that we carry within us the oneness and interconnectedness of all creation. And fourth, to create collaborative approaches that enable multifaceted responses to emerging mission challenges and foster a sense of community that reflects the diversity of all people of God. So we do not do it alone. And the fifth directive was a desire to be a community that exercises faithfully stewardship of its resources in a spirit of solidarity with each other and the poor, living in harmony with all creation. And subsequent general assemblies have deepened that aspect, the spirit of one earth community. Also, Pope Francis, in 2015, wrote an encyclical, Laudato Si. In this, he urged us, he said, we need to examine ourselves at what kind, I'm quoting him, what kind of world we want to leave those who come after us. He called us to an ecological conversion, and this conversion expressly addresses social exclusion and environmental devastation and degradation. This conversion, ecological conversion, causes and denounces the idea of infinite or unlimited growth, which proves so attractive to economists, financiers, and technological experts, based on the lie that there is infinite supply of the earth's goods, which leads us to the planet being squeezed dry beyond its limit. I just shared a story about my own small village where the hills have been depleted. Are we able to regrow them? I do not know. That ecological conversion also causes us to oppose the illusion of domination and extraction of Earth's resources with the spiritual vision of the Bible that celebrates our interconnectedness with the earth and the responsibility to care for our common home. It also calls us to radically acknowledge that the struggle for justice for the earth and that of the poor are interconnected. They are not only interconnected, but they are the same struggle. And also it calls us, and I'll quote him, for every effort to protect and improve our world until it entails profound changes in lifestyles, models of production and consumption, and established structures of power which today govern societies. So calling for a complete conversion for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That was beautiful, and I appreciate your correcting my word choice. I know that you have all these interwoven skills, and oh my goodness, thank you so much. And we're going to shift gears a little bit now, and we're going to hear from Tiffany Tu from the Buddha Suchi Foundation, with a focus that I know they hold on service. So Tiffany, please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, Grove, and thank you so much for this conversation. It's been so warm and touching, and I think we need more of these conversations just like this. I think the things that give me wind under my wings is the stories that we see from our communities. I was in Mozambique, and I saw how we had not only kind of the youth or the elderly come together, but this intergenerational dialogue and collaboration for our Mother Earth. They were planting trees along the waterways, so there was no degradation. We saw them like start up community vegetable patches to feed the local children. And I think it really relates to when communities come together, that is what is created, and that is the source of energy that we get. When I was in Philippines, you see that disasters, one after the other, happens all the time. But you see our communities understanding which are the vulnerable members within their homes and approaching them before the disasters, making sure they're safe. And then as soon as the disasters happen, they're out on the streets again, checking in on them, making sure that the waterways are clear, making sure that the rubbish has been taken care of, making sure that there's no pollution that is happening in these areas. And it's the sense of community that draws people together, that really brings everything together. And I think as we look upon these communities, one of the things that I like to do is to reflect back on my own faith and the Buddha's values of mindfulness, compassion, and interconnectedness. Mindfulness and compassion is not things that we should only talk about, but it's things that we should act upon, and transforming that everyday actions that we have to expressions of love and care for our earth. It's as simple as when we're eating every meal, do we choose to follow a plant-based diet, or do we choose a more environmentally friendly option? It could be when we are using water, how much water are we using? Do we brush our teeth with the faucet on, or do we turn the tap off? these simple acts are not only transformative, but it allows us to have that connection with nature every single day. I remember in primary school, we learn about the three R's, right? So we have reduce, reuse, and recycle. But could there be more R's? And in fact, there are. So in Tzu communities with our youth and across our schools, we teach 5 R's. The first R is to refuse. You don't even need to reduce the use of something if you just refuse to use it. Eliminating plastics is a good example of this. The next is reduce. If you have to use it, then how do we reduce that use? Of course, we reuse things is the next R. And then when things are a little broken, for example, our clothes may be a little ripped. Can we repair? Instead of getting new bicycle tires, can we repair? And the last, of course, is to recycle. So these mindful acts in our everyday life leads us so much closer to not only the values of our own faith, but also the earth in which nourishes us and feeds us. I remember when I went to a recycling station. So Tzu Foundation has 13,000 recycling stations around the world. These recycling stations are, we call them playgrounds for the elderly. And the reason is a lot of the volunteers in these recycling stations are actually people who have retired. And usually they sit at home and watch TV, right? Or they complain a lot. But when they come to these recycling stations, they have a community that allows them to thrive. We have doctors and nurses who will go in and check on them regularly so they get to know kind of these health aspects as well. We have the young children that come there for educational purposes, and the elderlies are so proud of themselves, like being able to teach the young kids in the community. And through this process, we can see that everybody has something to contribute to the environment. You can be young, you can be old, you can be 2, you can be 102, but you can always give back to the Mother Earth that nourishes us and grows us. So when we look at environmental work, it's not just about saying, it's about doing. It's about practicing the sutras and the scriptures that we have. And I think we need to engage in conversation dialogues just like this one. We need to engage in partnerships, working on the ground, helping the vulnerable communities. It strengthens what we have here. And through sharing our best practices and stories, we're not only coexisting with the earth, but we're allowing our communities to flourish and to grow. And I think this is the thing that really, I guess, inspires me when we talk about hope. I mean, it's hard not to have hope when we're in communities like this. It's hard not to have hope when you have the youth coming into our communities and stepping up. It's also hard not to have hope when you have your elderlies, all 102 years old, putting their experiences and sharing those experiences with everyone. So I think these communities are built on actions and hope. Thank you.
Well, this has been a totally beautiful experience from this vantage point to watch you all nodding in identification with someone else's passion because of the commonalities and also the different vantage points being expressed with real clarity and purpose and intent. So who in this room would like to jump into this conversation? Wow.
Need someone to interpret that for us?
Good evening to everyone. I am called Mashi Dolores. I'm from Cameroon. So I'm really happy to hear that you're talking about the intersection between earth and the faith, because I always told myself that if the world goes bad, the question would not be asked to the bad people. Will be asked to the good people, what did you do on the earth? So we have the obligation, the responsibility to seek and to look for ways to really protect the environment. So I would like to ask my question to Grace, because the way she presented her speech really opened my mind to really seek to understand, because we have a relationship with God. It can be God, it can be maybe your culture, it depends on to who we believe in. So can you have a relationship with God, we have a relationship with other brothers like humanity, and also to the Mother Earth. So now I want to know if from the example you gave, like we want people to protect the environment, to plant trees. And if they are a little bit they're hesitating a bit, you tell them that this is what the Bible says. So I don't know if ever you have met people who tells you we don't believe in anything, so there's no need to protect the environment, because I believe in many discussions I had with other people in Cameroon, they tell you we don't believe in whatever you're talking about, so there's no need for us to protect the environment. Instead, they believe in innovation, in what humanity can produce. But I think we came on earth to protect it. We met it, we will live it, and other people will also enjoy it. So I don't know if ever you have met people who says we don't believe in God or whoever created the environment, and therefore there's no need to protect it because we need to live our time and forget about other people. That's my question. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I proceed. Thank you for your question. First of all, before I start, I would like to read a quote. It was by Edmund Burke. And I got this from a gathering where we were gathered with other bishops. And it was kind of similar to the first question you asked. When the bad people gather to do the evil, what are we, God is going to ask us, what are we, the evil ones, doing? And yeah, what are us, the good men, doing? And this is what Edmund said. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. When bad men combine, the good must associate. Also, they will fall one by one. So when the bad men combine, us, the good people who know what we were put here on earth to do, should combine. They should associate. That's why I should know you, and we should bring all the people together to come together. When we come together, the bad men fall one by one. Okay, so let's move on to if I've ever met someone. So fortunately, or I don't know if unfortunately, I've never met. Yeah, but what I've met is people with different faith, different denominations, and something that can come closer to what you have met are the other people who are on the other side, who I said are like the people with vested interest, political aspirations, people with selfish ambitions. Like we had here, my sister, I mean, they're changing the channel of a river. Oh my God, that's a crime. It should be a crime for commercial purposes. So what I usually say is, we create dialogue. We can empower the community to create dialogue with these people, with these other people on the other end. We need to associate them to them. We know that so many other times it's hard to get them into dialogue and get them to listen. So when that is not possible, everyone has a place where the shoe pinches. And when we come together, we can find where the shoe pinches. So let's say, for example, you say they want to work on innovation, right? They want to which can be example. Maybe they need land to bring up a building for invention or do something, and the land is needed for farming. My situation, how I've dealt with this, is just by association. You need to come together. One thing I know, that the good men will always topple over the bad men. If they're doing innovation, find where the shoe is pinching them. Do your local context. Work with the local government. Find what do they need for this structure to come up. Pinch there. Work with another person who is maybe another politician who's also on the good side. Find their vulnerability, work on that. Come to the community, find their vulnerability in another aspect from the same members of the family, perhaps, work from there. Some ways might look not unorthodox or something, but we are Usually most of the time forced there, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I mean, if someone has anything else to to add to this, you're welcome. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge that we are at time, so I know that some people will have other commitments, and we did get started a little bit late. So if it's all right with my speakers, I'd like to ask you to stay for another 10 minutes. Does that work? Great. And another question, please.
Yes, good evening, all of you. Very lovely session. Actually, I've enjoyed. It is kind of like education. At the same time, getting different perspective and knowledge and experience. My name is Balkisa Bashir, and I work as a humanitarian aid. I work with indigenous and marginalized community. And I wonder, or I just ask the interfaith, what are they doing to do humanitarian aid to those people who are affected, whether it is war or poverty? And what are their responsibilities, basically? Because we are talking about faith here, and faith is all about heart and, taking responsibility. What is your responsibility as you are interfaith, and how are you dealing with the crisis that is ongoing, whether it is murder, whether it is, poverty, or whatever it is? Thank you so much. Pleasure.
I think that's a question for me. And I'll just share with you some insight from Dr. Aza Karam, who serves on the board of the Temple of Understanding. And one of her calls to all of the faith communities in their organizational status is to work more closely together, to share their resources, and to create joint solutions. It's my experience that most of the kind of humanitarian work is being done by a particular traditions organization. And so that we're not quite at the place now where there's that next level of sharing of resources. And so I feel that you are making the same call that I hear her making after decades of work. So I think you're being a little bit of a prophetic voice, and I hope that that provides some form of an answer to you. If others wanted to jump in on that, but
Yeah, so I actually have a very good example of some of the work that we're doing with Ukrainian refugees. When the war broke out, we were there at Tsuji Foundation. We're a Buddhist organization, so we were there. But actually, the volunteers that had the most experience working with refugees were from Turkey. They were Syrian refugees, and most of them were Muslims. So what we did was we had our Muslims brothers and sisters come over to Poland, which was majority a Catholic. Actually, we hold all our distributions in the Catholic Church. And the people that we were helping out were Orthodox. It's when disasters happen and when things happen in times of crisis, like Dhamma Master Zheng Yin, the founder of Tzu Chi, teaches us that there is no religion. Everybody is people. We all have the same color blood, which is red. We're all under the same sun, the same sky, and we're standing on the same earth. And I think although these are smaller examples of things that can happen, but it's through these stories and these partnerships that we are forming this interfaith connection and are able to share resources and to come together to help those that are in need.
thank you. That was a very wonderful example of what I've been hoping for, and I really appreciate understanding that it's happening on the ground already. So thank you. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Other people who want to get in on this while we've got the chance with these fabulous folks?
Grove, we have a question from someone online.
Oh, that would be terrific, Suzanne. Could you pin that person?
Maybe.
Suzanne is in Oklahoma, I believe. Amazing technology.
I don't know about the pinning, but the question is from Morgana. And Morgana, I'm not even going to attempt your last name. I don't want to disrespect it. But her question is for Grace. Can you tell us more? Community resilience, does it embrace, engage with faith-based organizations and faith actors?
Yes, it does. So when we talk about community resilience, we actually mean their self-resilience, the one I mentioned, their local available resources. What do they have within themselves to make themselves less vulnerable? So also to match it with the question that was asked earlier about for example, what are we doing in poverty in other vulnerable communities? I remember there was this time, there was a famine strike, and the land there was not quite arable. There was food insecurity issues. But what could we do as a church to make the people self-reliant? What we know is that the land might not be okay, but we have other people in other regions who can transport soil to us. Land is not sufficient, is not okay, but there are other people with soil in other regions within the diocese. In Anglican, we call the diocese. So we have the hilly areas and the flat areas from where I come from. And we were able to start a project where we're able to put these sands, this soil in, I think most of us have seen where we put them in sacks. Yeah, the sacks. And we give them to the congregants and we tell them with these sacks, we can empower you in capacity built on how you can grow your own vegetables. You can get food on your, you get food in your homestead without having land, because this area was in a sort of semi-urban area. So this is how you make them self-reliant, because even if you give them money, it will just, in 1 week's time, in 2 weeks, they will need groceries again. And the project was quite well. It was sustainable for almost a year. We have several families in church saying that they have not gone to the market to buy themselves any groceries. So that was one of our outcomes that show us that we can make communities self-reliant. We don't need outside aid. Most of the time, we just need us within ourselves to show us what we need. It was just one person in the church. Oh, I know this method. I think we can grow spinach, kale, and tomatoes from our balconies. And that is how it was. I hope I've answered the question correctly. Yeah. Do I need to add?
Frankie, I want to check in with you and see whether there was something that you wanted to weigh in on in these questions that I may have missed.
Sure. I think it was the last speaker when asking about accountability and like the responsibilities from my perspective in my community, in my home, it was the missions, it was the Catholic and Christian institutions that changed the direction of our rivers. They were the concentration camps to our people. They took the women and children of our community. They farmed our lands. And I think that it's these kind of spaces that we can find some understanding of what accountability and responsibility is. And how do we have accountability not just to the people and the original people of the lands that we reside in, but by having that conversation is when it's taking the first step to a healing process, then you can start to discuss what does it look like and what does the path forward look like in those communities. And I would say instead of asking how outside institutions can come in and support and give the support needed, it's more about how can you support that community to become self-sufficient and be able to sustain themselves for themselves instead of doing it for them, maybe helping to support them, to empower them to prevent those types of things from happening and continuing to happen, be perpetuated in their communities, right? To empower them to a point where they are coming up with their own community-based solutions to take care of their communities where they are the experts of their environment where they're at. So I think that having those discussions of how we move forward all has to start with the acknowledgement, right? Like a lot of times when I come into these spaces to talk about environmentalism, I kind of treat it like an AA meeting. My name is Frankie Arona. I'm here to talk about environmentalism, but I took a plane here. I took an Uber. We're all contributing at different degrees and levels to the very thing that we're here to address. But it's about forcing change to the 1% that decides what societies in the multitude of different governments that exist that they then dictate what those societies become dependent on, right? We need to force them to make those changes. Those large institutions that perpetuate that continued dependency on these systems that have been put in place for generations, right? And I think that we need to move back more towards the traditional ecological and knowledge and wisdom, because there's many ways of gaining knowledge, but wisdom comes with life experience, lived experience, right? And so I think that understanding what it is to take care of your home, your community, your people, the love and the connection that you have needs to come from and have direction from the people that have those ties to those communities and to those lands that are there. Because we can come up with all the solutions and we can say, hey, we can talk about recycling being a solution, but if it was a real solution, we wouldn't have the problem that we're in today, right? So what is the real solutions? What are the real solutions and it's those communities who are the experts that can tell you what are the right solutions, what are the real sustainable solutions, because they truly care about their life, not continuing to perpetuate a cycle of harm and abuse. Because it's a great conversation to have when we talk about our relatives that are waste pickers, that that economy that they have become dependent on is also harmful and takes some of the lifespan away from them because of how harsh it is and the human impacts and negative impacts that it has on them for generations. And so when you look at their economy and how it contributes to their economy and what their views are, you have to understand that perspective is at the detriment of my kind of communities where virgin production is happening, right? And then my solution in my communities is at the detriment of their economy, right? And so you have to have those conversations to really understand how we impact each other when we don't know each other, when we don't see each other, we're on the other sides of the world. But that having those conversations and those dialogues is what helps us to find some real solutions and synergies that is beneficial for everyone. So we need to continue to have these types of dialogues, but also know that we have to look within ourselves sometimes of having that accountability, not just to ourselves, but to each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frankie. I'm wondering if the other panelists who haven't had a moment to weigh in on the questions would like to give us, I don't know, a closing thought or two. Shananine, would you care to share a thought?
Well, I think I resonate a lot with what has been said about sort of healing like the inequality and like the violence of these systems through what we are doing, not only in our projects and our communities, but also in this movement that we're creating. I believe that is very important to like not replicate the same mistakes within these alternatives that we are trying to create. because that is a real challenge that comes forward when if we are fighting power, and if then we acquire power, what are we going to do with it, and how is that other world going to look like? So like to be mindful of that in the everyday practice of fighting for it, what a system we're creating in alternation as well.
Thank you. Brilliant. Please, Susan.
For me, I resonate with everything that's been said. My last word will be, as we continue to work towards healing the earth, we need really to listen to the wisdom of the indigenous peoples, because they know, they have lived with the land, the waters, the sky, and the relationships that have helped them conserve these spaces. For us to be here today, we need that knowledge. We need to value it. We need to listen deeply and not just look at the technological experts who come and say, this is what you need to do. So I think that those are my words only. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you feeling you've spoken enough, or would you like to put in another word or two? You've spoken enough. You've been very popular. Okay. You feel complete? Okay. Dahlia, please.
Wow. Well, after listening an amazing panel with so great histories and feelings and sharing experiences, my final words are: believe in you. Don't leave the environment change your values, your principles, who you are. Keep doing your best. And love. To me, love and empathy are the main values that can push you to achieve justice, no leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Round of applause. Thank you profoundly, everyone. And I'd love to stay in touch and see you in the days to come. Just thank you for a very wonderful experience. And thank you to everyone online. I hope that this offering gives you a little feeling of what we've got going on here. And I hope that everyone will pray for the best possible resolutions at the conference we're working at. So thank you and good night.